What separates those who flourish from those who crumble when facing identical adversities? The answer may lie in an ancient philosophy that, contrary to everything modern culture teaches us, asserts that the path to strength isn't in avoiding failure but in transforming it. While we spend fortunes on self-help books promising success without obstacles, a Roman emperor had already discovered nearly 2,000 years ago what neuroscience is only now confirming. Our interpretation of events, not the events themselves, determines our fate. This knowledge, preserved in the yellowed pages of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, remains scandalously revolutionary because it suggests that you already possess everything you need to transform any setback into an advantage. What few realize is that Stoicism isn't a philosophy of passive resignation, as erroneously propagated, but a practical methodology of personal empowerment that has been utilized by leaders from Roman generals to Silicon Valley CEOs. While most desperately seek to control the uncontrollable, practitioners of this ancient wisdom achieve an inner freedom that no external circumstance can affect. The inconvenient truth that Marcus Aurelius reveals to us is that we are wasting precious energy fighting against reality, when we could be using that same energy to grow through it. In an era of increasing emotional fragility, where any setback is viewed as trauma, Stoicism offers a powerful antidote: the ability to transform poison into medicine. What distinguishes the great men and women of history isn't the absence of adversities in their lives, but how they interpreted them. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that the impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This revolutionary perspective invites us to see each obstacle not as an insurmountable barrier, but as an invitation to growth in personal transformation. How often have we encountered seemingly impossible situations that, in the end, revealed themselves as life's greatest teachers? It's precisely here that the genius of Stoic thought resides. The understanding that external events don't determine our happiness, but rather the interpretation we give them. When someone loses a job, for instance, they can view it as a tragedy or as an opportunity to reinvent themselves professionally and seek something more aligned with their values and talents. The practice of this philosophy begins with a simple mental exercise. Facing any setback, ask yourself, how can I use this to my advantage? An executive who misses a promotion can use the experience to identify skills they need to develop. An artist who receives criticism can refine it into fuel to improve their technique. This perspective shift isn't mere positive rhetoric, but a practical tool that transforms our relationship with everyday challenges, allowing us to extract value even from life's most difficult situations. There is profound wisdom in the ability to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. Marcus Aurelius teaches us, do not be disturbed by that which does not depend on you. This seemingly simple distinction carries the potential to free us from countless unnecessary sufferings. When we stubbornly cling to specific outcomes or resist the natural flow of events, we create for ourselves a mental prison of anxiety and frustration that drains our vital energy. Stoic detachment doesn't mean, as many mistakenly interpret, indifference or apathy toward life. Quite the opposite. It's about a more lucid and effective engagement with reality. Imagine a doctor who, despite all efforts, loses a patient. instead of torturing himself indefinitely with guilt. He recognizes the limits of his influence, learns from the experience, and moves forward to help other patients. This isn't an example of coldness, but of practical wisdom that allows valuable work to continue. The practice of acceptance can begin with small daily exercises, such as consciously observing our reactions when traffic is congested or when someone criticizes us unfairly. Works like Epictetus's The Art of Living offer practical exercises to develop this skill. By cultivating the ability to accept the inevitable with serenity, we release an extraordinary amount of mental energy that was previously wasted on useless resistance. This energy, now available, can be directed toward constructive actions in what is effectively under our control. Few understood as deeply as Marcus Aurelius that true freedom comes not from favorable external circumstances, but from a disciplined mind. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength, he wrote in his nightly reflections. This perspective, radical in its simplicity, directly challenges the contemporary notion that happiness depends on the accumulation of possessions, status, or experiences. The philosopher emperor, even while occupying the most powerful position in the known world, sought his fortress not in the throne but in sovereignty over his own thoughts. Stoic inner discipline manifests in three fundamental domains: control of desires, virtuous action, and rational assent. This isn't about artificial repression of impulses, but conscious alignment with higher values. When someone resists the temptation to react with anger to a provocation, they aren't merely suppressing emotions, but actively choosing a response more aligned with their principles. This daily practice of self-mastery, far from being a straitjacket, reveals itself as the path to deeper authenticity and a freedom that no external circumstance can compromise. The cultivation of this inner discipline can begin with simple practices such as morning meditation on personal values, evening self-examination, a practice Marcus Aurelius diligently performed, or the exercise of delaying immediate gratifications in favor of greater long-term benefits. Works like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and Seneca's Letters to Lucilius offer practical roadmaps for this journey. As we strengthen this internal muscle of self-discipline, we discover an inexhaustible source of resilience that sustains us even in the most challenging circumstances, transforming each apparent failure into a stepping stone for our growth. As we dive into the deep waters of Marcus Aurelius's Stoicism, we aren't merely studying an ancient philosophy. We're rediscovering a mental technology that can radically transform our life experience. Ask yourself, how many opportunities for growth have you missed by interpreting them as definitive failures? How much time and emotional energy have you wasted resisting the inevitable instead of accepting and adapting? What would change in your life if, like Marcus Aurelius, you began to daily practice the inner discipline that liberates? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations to action, to practical experimentation with these principles in your everyday life. Stoicism wasn't meant to remain confined to dusty books, but to be lived in the trenches of daily challenges. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to the channel, activate the notifications, and join this community of seekers who are rediscovering the timeless wisdom of the ages and applying it to the challenges of the modern world. After all, as Marcus Aurelius himself would say, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. What quality will you choose to cultivate from now on?